Hey guys, Zakk here from MixChecks.com. Today we're going to be doing another mix breakdown. This song is called Empires and it's by a band called RadioNot. Their information will be down in the description below. And also what's special about this one is we mixed it with only Logic's stock plugins. So there's no third-party plugins, no third-party processing. It's just what you get when you buy Logic. So let's jump right in. Okay, let's bust out this mix. So first, I'm just going to let you hear the mix, just a part of it, so you can get an idea of what's going on. And then after that, we'll go track by track, solo stuff, so you can hear and see the plugins and processing and stuff. So let's play it.
You like drama, you like big step, big shoes, but I'm gonna come to you like a fright. I promise I'll take you into the light. I just wanna hold you till my breaks. I just wanna hold you till my breaks. I know your heart is dark inside, but I am not afraid of the night. You run, you hide, you fall, you climb, but I am not afraid of a fight. I know your heart is dark inside, but I am not afraid of the night. You want horror.
Okay, I've been trying to figure out how to speed these videos up a little bit, so we'll just stop there. And if you do a quick glance, you know, this is all stock Logic plugins. I'm not using anything third party. And you can pretty much see that most of my mix is just EQ compression, EQ compression, EQ compression, and then this fat effects thing that I discovered while mixing, which you can see in the live mixing session. And that's pretty much it, you know, other than, you know, reverb and effects and stuff. That's the basis of my mixing, is just EQ and compression. So let's jump right into the drums. I'll let you hear the drum bus soloed real quick. Let's find a good part for it here. Okay, and so the drums, it's actually a combination for the kick and the snare. So the snare, let me unhide everything here. So for the kick, sorry. The kick is a combination of kick, sub-kick, and then a kick sample from Logic, which is actually a combination of, what is this, 3 or 4 different samples from Logic sample library, still stock. And so my kick master is made up of those 3 things. And you can see on the kick, oh, I still have the drum bus soloed here. Let's solo this. So this is the kick master. It does have the fat effects on, and that is just adding distortion or saturation to just really beef it up. And then The rest of them are just EQ and compression. So this is my top kick sound. You can see the EQ on that. Then you can add in the sub kick. Sub kick is just filtered down, boosted at 50. And then also the sample, which has this EQ and then some compression on it. And then also on the sub kick, I'm hitting it pretty hard with the compressor to keep it nice and consistent in that low end. And then more compression on the top kick. And that's what makes up the kick sound that we got in our stock Logic mixing session. And then for the snare, kind of similar. We have our snare master, which is made up of snare samples. So you can see the same thing, this fat effects from Logic, just adding saturation at 100%. Saturation really fattens up drums specifically. So snare and kick, it just really adds that kind of smashes it down. Here, I'll let you hear it with and without it. Okay, and so yeah, it's another mixture of Logic samples from the sampler. So 3 different samples and then the actual snare drum, which sounds like this. And I usually have to do a bit of work on the actual snare drum just to make sure it will blend well with the samples. So you want to get that sounding good before you reinforce it with samples. And so this is what EQ looks like on that, just more compression. And then another little EQ tweak at the end. And so that's the kick and snare. For the toms, let's hide these back again. The tom roll. Oh, hold on, something soloed. Let's unsolo all this. There we go. Toms, more EQ, just getting that snappiness out of them. And then a big mid scoop on the toms just for that rock, scooped tom sound. And then just more compression. And they only hit a few times during the song, and that's pretty much it. For overheads, I like to pull out all the low end and just keep them more as cymbal mics. And you can also see a little notch here for some annoying frequencies that happen in the cymbals. And these were, I guess, a little too bright, so I, dropped down this high-end sizzle just a little bit. Let you hear So that's with no processing. And then you can see for the hi-hat and drum room, didn't even use them at all. I don't normally use a hi-hat mic even when they send me one. I can usually get just enough hi-hat from the overheads without needing a hi-hat mic. Same situation for bottom snare mics. I don't ever find myself using them that often, unless it's like a jazz or something where that snare sizzle is really needed. Okay, so again, the drums are being sent to a bus, a drum bus. And then this drum bus just has a compressor to kind of glue them together a little bit, and then also another level of saturation just on all the drums to really fatten them up. So that's with no saturation. You can see it just kind of adds a little bit of oomph to drums, and it's a really good drum mixing trick. It's just to distort them, saturate them a little bit. And then also, a lot of these drums are being sent to the drum room we have going on, and that's just a Space Designer. A big room is the IR I picked. I believe it comes stock with Logic or in Apple computers. Then I'm also EQing the reverb. I always filter out the low end because I don't want that muddiness coming from the reverb. Then I filter out the high end so it doesn't interact too much with, muddying up that high end. And then let me solo this with the drums. So since it's the room reverb, other stuff is being sent to it, which is why you hear other things coming in now. Kind of glues all the other instruments together in the mix to give it a more live kind of rock feel. Then moving on to the bass, we have a mixture. Just using the Logic stock bass amp on the flip top amp setting. And then we also have they provided a crunch track, and let me see here. So yeah, I'm just blending these together. And on bass in particular, I always smash it really hard on the bass just because I want that low end to be a nice flat foundation for the mix. I don't want the low end to be all over the place, so I really smash the bass. Sometimes I'll even limit it. On this one, it just has a compressor, but you can see how much it's taken off. It's like 12 dB of compression. And then just a little bit of EQ. On the bass, I notch out 50 to leave room for the kick, and then boost 100 because that's where I want my bass to sit, and then the kick to sit at 50, and then it makes for a good blend of bass and kick. Moving on to the guitars. And they also had they sent me, 2 bass tracks or 3 bass tracks, and I only used these 2. I didn't find a need for this other one. You want horror. So here's my guitar EQ. A little notch to get rid of some annoying frequencies, and then just high pass, low pass, and then a little notch at 500 to get rid of some of that boxiness and kind of smooth it out. Okay, and then a little bit more compression. For rock specifically, the more stages of compression you add, the louder you can get your final mix and just the punchier it'll be. I know some people will disagree with loud and stuff like that, but this is a rock track, and that's the way I'm going to keep doing it until things change. I mean, they're getting close with all the streaming stuff. So it's getting to the point where I might consider changing how loud I make stuff, but right now we're sticking with our normal, get things loud and punchy. This was a stereo guitar track that they sent. Didn't need to do much to it. High pass, low pass, compressor. can hear that high-end kind of hiss and sizzle that I filtered out with this low pass. It's that digital kind of distortion that I didn't want in there. And it was an easy fix with a low pass filter. They had some acoustic guitars. Didn't have to do much, just high pass, a little shelf in the high end. They only really came in the choruses anyways. And I didn't want that low end to muddy up anything else in the mix. So here's another acoustic track, same thing. Pretty much just copied and pasted the settings from one to the other. Just EQ and compression. And then we have a solo guitar. Really similar setup to the rhythm guitars. I think I left a little bit more high end on this one so it would cut through, but same annoying frequency notch and same high pass. And then I believe all the guitars, yeah, they were just on their own on this mix. Sometimes I'll create a guitar bus if I need to have individual control over just the guitars, but not on this mix. And then we also have a lot of synth stuff going on.
It's dark inside, but I am not.
Didn't do much to them, just EQ on this one, filtering out the low end so it doesn't mess with anything else. On this one, I needed it to be a little bit wider, and also wanted to cut some space for the vocals because synths are terrible at muddying up your vocals. So this scoop is for the vocals to sit, and then everything else is just to make sure it doesn't interfere with other instruments. And then on this one in particular, I tried the spreader thing in Logic just to try and make it a little wider. It didn't work too well. Honestly, I have a third-party plugin that I would normally use, the Real ADT from Waves, if I want to make something stereo that's mono. But it worked a little bit, just not as well. See, it's just kind of eh. Okay, so that's the synths.
I know your heart is dark inside, but I am.
And then there were lots of little sound effect stuff, but I mean, didn't really do a ton to them. I mean, it was just like, you know, little reverse cymbals and stuff like that. I think some reverse vocals and it's like some chop stuff over here. Yeah, so lots of stuff like that. But going into the vocals, so this is where I did the most processing, and that's usually where I have to, other than, you know, just your normal EQ and compression. To go down this chain, we have the Logic de-esser 2, which I was happy to find. I didn't know that they made a second de-esser in Logic because their first one was absolutely terrible. I would never use it, but this one worked just fine.
You like big step, big shoes, but I'm gonna.
I like it, so you can definitely make a good vocal mix and get some good de-essing with Logic stock plugins now. We did some slight just Logic pitch correction. I bumped the response back. I mean, she's a good singer, so you don't really need too much. It just kind of helps them out.
Come to you like a fright.
And went in with just some pretty basic EQ, nothing crazy, just high pass. And I like to filter out a big chunk of 500 on vocals. It kind of gives it that radio smoothness kind of thing. And this is usually the starting point for a lot of my vocals. The thing that I adjust the most is probably the high pass. It'll go up or down depending on how much body I need on the vocals. And then sometimes if there's issues in the top end with the mic or the way it was recorded, then I'll fix those. But this is my basic starting point for vocal EQ.
I'll take you into the light. I just wanna...
And then I love serial compression on vocals. So I start off with 2:1 ratio, attack all the way up, do about 6 dBs of compression. And the second one is 4:1, attack all the way up, and then another 6 dBs of compression. So about 12 dBs of compression in total. And then just having that serial compression kind of makes it smooth.
I know your heart is dark inside, but I am not afraid of the night.
And then I pretty much, once I get that lead vocal sound, I can copy it to the background vocals and just kind of keep it going. Don't really have to do anything crazy. And then also there's obviously effects. So first one we're going to is our vocal reverb. Same concept, just different impulse response, female Vauxhall. Also comes with Apple Logic. I always turn the pre-delay up a little bit to, add clarity back to them. Wet all the way up, dry all the way down since it's on a bus. And then still just EQ in the reverb. A little bit of vocals being sent to the room in this bus 6, and then in bus 8 is a delay.
Night you run, you hide before you climb, but I am not
So it's being delayed and then really filtering the delay hard, so it's kind of that telephone style delay. And then I'm actually sending the delay back to the vocal reverb just a little bit to kind of glue those effects together.
not afraid of a fight. Whoa, I know your heart is dark inside.
And then all of the tracks, now that we're kind of getting into the mastering side of things, are being bused to this bus. And I call this the dynamic adder, just to kind of make the mix a little bit more interesting. So in the choruses, just bumping it up about 1.5 dB versus bringing it back down, and it just kind of adds that dynamic, fake dynamics to the mix as a whole. So yeah, there's just a little jump there from verse to chorus, and you can see it happening throughout the song. And then finally, going on to our master bus. And this is all Logic stock plugins. So actually, you know what? That's not totally true because I use this. But this is just an A/B plugin. It's not actually doing any processing that you wouldn't normally be able to do with Logic. So first thing in my Logic mastering chain is this Tube EQ, vintage Tube EQ from Logic. It's basically a Pultec model. You can see just boosting a little high end, boosting a little low end, and then I put these at 100, and they're just shelf EQs, and this one's at 4K. And then after the EQ, into the Logic stock. This is supposed to be an emulation of the SSL G-Bus just taking off a few dB, nothing too drastic on the master bus.
For you climb, but
And that's going into the multipressor.
I'm not afraid of a fight. Whoa.
So after A-Bing this mix and car checking and stuff like that, I noticed that I needed a little bit more top end, that I had mixed it dark. So I boosted that on this since it's later in the stage. If I would have done it on the 2BQ, it would have, went through 2 compressors and the multipressor. So I just did it here, raised up that top end to give it a little bit of shine.
I know.
And then after that, it just goes into the adaptive limiter, just adding loudness. So I always turn on these two things. This one's on by default, the DC offset, and then this one you have to turn on just so it can help prevent inner sample peaks. Then I'll knock this down 0.2 dB to also help prevent inner sample peaks, and then you just boost up the gain to the loudness you want. And also using the stock loudness meter from Logic.
Your heart is dark inside, but I am not afraid of the night. You want horror, you crave trauma, you want a big gun, a big chair, you want.
And that's pretty much the program. If you have any questions about anything, you can drop them in the comments. You can hit me up on MixChecks or our Facebook group. Please subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel. We're growing. It's a new channel, so we'd love to have you be a part. And I will see you guys in the live mixing session if you want to see this mix in more detail. And if you haven't seen the quick mix yet of just, flashing back and forth, you can go check that out too. And see you guys next time. Later.